Republicans and many in conservative media have floated a lot of different conspiracy theories about January 6th, especially about who had perpetrated the violence. Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and many others have put the blame on Antifa for the riots, and even accused the FBI of being involved. Now, all of those things, of course, are absolute nonsense. There's no evidence of any of that. Investigations prove no involvement by Antifa or BLM in the protests or in the subsequent riots. Nonetheless, according to a number of polls, a lot of Republicans believe that no, it wasn't us. It was Antifa. It was BLM. It wasn't us. It wasn't us. The fact that YouGov CBS poll found that 41% of Republicans believed that most of those who forced their way into the Capitol were left-leaning groups pretending to be Trump supporters. And according to a January 2nd to the 4th poll from YouGov, The Economist, Republicans believe 51% to 26% that Trump opponents were involved in the riot. 59% to 14% that Antifa was involved, and 52% to 23% that Black Lives Matter was involved. Now, I'm going to give you all that context for this video where an MSNBC contributor had actually interviewed Republican voters in Georgia and asked them about January 6th. Here's that video.
How many of those troublemakers were actually Antifa or intentional?
Exactly.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Troublemakers. There's just a whole series of questions that don't add up. And you got to go through this much boilerplate and crap to find the three little nuggets of truth or hard factor information that really matters. And I'm just so frustrated with the entire thing, I want to forget about it. And I looked at every photograph in the AJC. There were about 20 pictures in that newspaper that day. And all of the ones that were smashing and bashing and crashing, 25, 28 years old, skinny jeans with the beards. And I said to myself, that's not the normal Republican. I mean, look at us here. I mean, maybe he was paid to do that. None of it makes any sense. There is so much going on when you bore down into the facts.
Well, and let's take a step. So if this was happening and it was Antifa, then why didn't President Trump whip into action and stop it? He didn't tweet. He didn't call off the dogs. Why was that?
I mean, you can see right there the moment where his brain was broken. Like, uh-oh. Oh no, does not compute. The visible confusion on his face. It is absolutely priceless. Priceless. Now, look, I think we all know at this point that if it were BLM or Antifa, or mostly BLM, let's be fair, that they would have been shot on sight. I mean, think about it this way. What do you think the government would do if a bunch of black men started running at a police barrier? I think we all know what would happen. It would have been a massacre, an absolute massacre. And by the way, had it been either of those groups, do you think that right-wing media wouldn't be talking about this every single day? That Fox News would be like, oh, by the way, do you remember when Antifa and BLM dressed up as Trump supporters and invaded the Capitol? Now, again, you do hear them, they'll say it casually, like, oh, yeah, you know, it was totally Antifa and BLM. But anyway, moving on. We'll talk about something else. And by the way, a lot of Republicans polled when asked were like, oh, you know, January 6th, not a big deal. Let's put it all behind us. But wait, if it was Antifa or BLM that had done that, the last thing they would want to do is put it behind them and say that it wasn't a big deal. It makes no sense. It's cognitive dissonance to the max. They know it was their side. They know it was their side. I mean, just absolutely amazing. And I love the excuse here. They didn't look like typical Republicans. I mean, they're just young and they had skinny jeans and beards. Definitely not Republicans. Oh, really? Really? Well, again, that's not even true. Interestingly enough, this is according to research here. The typical right-wing extremist is actually under the age of 34. So it actually kind of fit that profile, right? But January 6th rioters, their demographics actually were mostly into their 40s and 50s. Now, this is according to the University of Chicago Project on Security, who found that of the 716 people arrested or charged as of January 1st, 2022, for storming the Capitol, more than half of them are actually white. No, not just half of them. Half of them were actually business owners, including CEOs, or from white-collar occupations, including doctors, lawyers, architects, and accountants. Those people who were generally more established economically. So it wasn't an issue of like, we're being destroyed in this economy. No, they're actually doing pretty great. And they were not young. Only 7%, by the way, were unemployed. 14% were members of militias, such as Oath Keepers or extremist groups, such as the Proud Boys. 86% had no affiliation to either of those groups. Many of them actually came from urban areas, such as San Francisco, LA, Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, Houston, and Dallas. Definitely doesn't fit the normal, white terrorists, right? No, the thing that united them is racism. Racism. They come from counties where the white share of the population had been declining the fastest. Not surprisingly, the number one belief among the insurrectionists on January 6th, shared by fully 75% of them, is great replacement theory, of where white people are being replaced by the Democratic Party. The thing that Tucker Carlson endlessly rails against, talks about. That thing has been mainstreamed in the Republican Party. Again, when you look at the breakdown of the rioters, 93% were white. 86% were male. Very few of them actually had military or law enforcement experience. They were overwhelmingly educated. They were members of the middle class. And they consumed mainstream media alongside of right-wing media. In fact, only 10% of them got their news from mainly right-wing social media like Gab or Telegram. So understand that this is a group of very non-typical Americans. White Americans, of course, who were motivated by racism. Not economic anxiety, but racism. Who knew all the reality, but chose to ignore it. And that is incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. I mean, again, you look at who they blame. Oh, it was Antifa. It was BLM. Antifa isn't even a real organization. It's an ideology. People identify as being anti-fascist. Why? Because they don't want to be fascist. If you're against being anti-fascist, then what does that make you? It makes you fascist. Same thing. BLM, obviously, and Antifa, and the left are anti-racist. Now, if you're anti-racist, what does that make you? Makes you racist. I mean, look, we know who these people are. We know why they did it. They said, we want an authoritarian. We want Donald Trump to run this country because we are afraid that we are being replaced by brown people and black people. It is racism 100%. Oh, the reality in the world could not get through to them and make them realize that, hey, look, demographics might be changing in this country, but that doesn't mean that you're losing your power. That doesn't mean that you're going to be treated poorly. But the thing is that these people are so afraid of minorities taking over or outnumbering them, right? Because they believe that they're going to get treated the way that they treated those same minorities. Fear served up to them by mainstream media, corporate media, which Fox News is. The Fox News has mainstreamed these ideas. Tucker Carlson talks about it all the time. And not just Tucker Carlson. A lot of the hosts on Fox News talking about Great Replacement, Mark Levin, Great Replacement. All these people, all these staples of Fox News that is considered to be a legitimate news source in this country. That's where they're getting this from. One of the major Republican party, or one of the major parties in this country, the Republican Party, has mainstreamed all of this. Broken. This is a broken country. This is a broken political system. And what are the Democrats doing to fight back? We can reason with them. Oh, we can just shake them out. The fever will break, as Obama had said. No, the fever will never break. It will never break. And your weakness, your appeasement of the far right will do nothing. Will do nothing. And the reason it can't, one of the reasons, of course, that they don't fight back as well is because guess what? They would rather side, unfortunately, with the fascists. The moneyed interests would side with the fascists, the authoritarians, as long as that money continues to roll in. As long as corporations, corporate America, the donor class continues to make money, they will turn a blind eye to this. Because they will always ally with each other. The center and the far right will ally with each other to crush the left. Because the left actually challenges their own financial interests.